Hi everyone, my name is Bernard Jackman and welcome to this week's episode of Beyond 80, where we're going to look back at round 4 of the Six Nations Championship. I think all the nations coaches must have got together over the fallow week and said we're going to let our teams play, because what style, what drama, what flair we saw on the field. From Marcus Smith's late drop goal to help England beat Ireland in Twickenham, to the youth that Fabien Galtier put on the field for France, and they turned it around with a big win over Wales, and then obviously the Italians building on that draw in Lille, getting a huge win against Scotland, and now it's all set up nicely for round 5. So a little bit later, I'm going to be joined by Sam Larner, who's been crunching the numbers behind 3 games of the weekend, and definitely we see a big shift in some of the numbers, and we've seen that change some of the results, predicted results this weekend. Now let's get into the key moments from the weekend's game. So all the talk leading into Twickenham was how Ireland were the best team in the world. England obviously took umbrage to that and brought their best performance since the World Cup semi-final to be deserving winners. They outplayed Ireland, and even though they needed a late Marcus Smith drop goal to finish it off, I felt that they were deserved winners. And also, the way they started the game set the tone, and it wasn't the kicking game, it wasn't the set piece, it was their ability to hurt Ireland on the counter-attack. So we're going to look at that Ollie Lawrence try, which early in the game sent a message to Ireland that England were there to play. So we know a big part of Ireland's kicking game is using James Lowe's massive left boot. And I think England did their homework before the game and wanted to pressurise him, and Ben Earls is the one who gets to him. So we're going to have a little look at it here on the footage, and we see Ben Earls gets to James Lowe, which makes him kick that ball infield. I'm really impressed by how England's centres work back. Both centres got back 30 metres to be able to go forward, and then once the tackle is made, Ireland don't fold around a corner quick enough, so it's a 4v3, which again Ireland should be able to execute, but England's ability to run straight, square and fix the man and create that overlap on the outside was really, really impressive. And I just think it was a real sign of all the things England have been talking about over the last 3 or 4 weeks that they've been working on, which we haven't seen on the field. But early in the game, that Ollie Lawrence try set the marker, and I think England grew in confidence in some of their attacking game. It was Ireland-like, and that's a big compliment to make. So I think it was a brilliant all-round performance by England. Physicality, George Martin in the second row. Wow, they've missed him. Ollie Chesson playing 6. Big gamble from Borthwick, but it certainly worked. Ireland just couldn't win the gain line battles, and even that short passing game that we know Ireland like to use was made redundant really because of that power and physicality that England were bringing with their defensive line speed. Just didn't let Ireland breathe. And that's effectively the blueprint to beat Ireland. New Zealand did it in the World Cup. England did it on Saturday. Problem is, only certain teams have the power and the size and the physicality to be able to do that. But certainly England's win is going to give a lot of other teams confidence that Ireland are very much beatable. Scotland went to Rome as hot favourites after a very positive performance against England in the Calcutta Cup match. But the Italians, they weren't disappointed. They didn't lose confidence with that late draw against France. And if anything, they actually played their best game of the season. And for me, the key moment was Louis Lina's try. Just another exciting back to add to the talent that Gonzalo Quesada has to choose from. It starts with a ruck on the right-hand side. Italy are really comfortable in their multi-phase attack. And again, we see here that ability for their forwards to make key passes. So they play from the ruck to Garbisi. He plays to tight head prop out the back, and then they take contact and move the point of contact behind. Garbisi does brilliantly here. He sees that there's no cover in the backfield. And I love the way Louis Lina isn't out in the wing. He's looking to isolate and pick off front 5 defenders a little bit closer to the breakdown. Communication is excellent. He gives the call, little grubber kick through off Garbisi's left foot, and they're not going to stop Lina from there. Scotland would be disappointed. Steve Tandy, the defence coach, would be disappointed with the cover coming across. Finn Russell does try and make up a lot of ground. Probably will feel he could have left it a little bit earlier, and also they don't recover in the backfield as well as they would have liked. Certainly their blind wing should be coming across as well. So a bit to work on for Scotland there, and certainly an area that Ireland will see as an opportunity to exploit this weekend. But for Italy, that try was a key moment for me. So that win for Italy is absolutely massive. We know Zebra and Benetton have been better this year. The draw against France was an okay result, but to beat Scotland in Rome will give them incredible confidence. They now go to Cardiff this weekend and will try and make sure Wales finish up with the wooden spoon. There's future's bright for Italian rugby. Scotland, Gregor Townsend must be distraught. He just can't get back-to-back performances. What will they do this week in Dublin with Ireland probably keen to put a bit of a backlash in place? So next up, we're going to be joined by Sam Larner for the Insights by Sage section of the show. Sam, welcome back. What have the numbers told us from that Italy v Scotland game?
It's a little bit of a on repeat for Scotland. So Scottish discipline this tournament has been pretty poor. They've conceded more than 10 penalties in every single match, apart from that one against France. They conceded 12 penalties on Saturday. And also what they've had a habit of doing is stacking those penalties on top of one another. So we probably all remember that opening game, 14 penalties to none for Wales. In this game, they had a 30-minute period where they conceded 8 penalties and Italy none. And so that's really the kind of slide that Scotland got themselves onto, and Italy were able to come back into the game thanks to that.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was coaching in France, we looked at what statistics actually swung matches' momentum and actually stacking penalties. So back-to-back penalties or back-to-back-to-back penalties had a way bigger influence than a scrum penalty or a big hit, etc. And it just really seems to be hurting Scotland at the moment. They just give teams easy entries into the game.
Absolutely. And I think people think all penalties are equal, but of course, if you're a defender on your line and you can do something that slows the ball down, which means you don't concede a try, you concede a penalty, that's a pretty smart penalty. But what Scotland are doing is giving away quite a lot of silly penalties where they are just giving up field position. They did it against Wales, where Wales wouldn't have a hope of getting back into that game if Scotland hadn't have started down this kind of disciplinary route. And same for Italy, where Italy, I think, possibly would have been out of that game had Scotland not really just taken their foot off the gas.
Okay, so Scottish disciplines hurt them, but what did Italy do well that helped them to a famous win?
The defensive effort was unbelievable. So they've now made more than 170 tackles in every single game of this Six Nations. They did it again this game, 199. But unbelievably, they've made the most tackles of the tournament, 754. Not a single one of those tackles has been pinged for being high. So it's not just the effort in defence, it's the accuracy in defence as well.
Okay, I think that defensive effort is something that had fallen away a little bit under the end of Kieran Crowley's reign. The World Cup, they shipped big defeats, so putting a huge amount of effort in, but it's that discipline is just helping them stay in games, and their attacking game has gone to a different level as well, so they're actually able to score tries now.
Absolutely. I don't think that they're going to be able to keep being successful, making 170 or more tackles every single game. If you look at the teams who've done that in this tournament, it's been Ireland did it against Wales, England have done it, but really just one or two matches. Italy have done it every single match, and that will tell at some point. But I think they've got one last game against Wales. I think they can just get themselves up for that. But in future, they're going to have to look at how they can be a bit more forceful on the game in terms of their attacking play.
Okay, Sam, now we're going to look at, for me, what for me was one of the best games of the competition so far, England v Ireland. I was pitch side. For me, it looked like England were vastly different in terms of how they wanted to play. Do the stats back that up?
Absolutely. In fact, it looked like England and Ireland had switched shirts. Pretty much everything England did was almost directly copied from what Ireland had been doing in the previous games. So, for example, England made Ireland miss 25 tackles. Ireland haven't missed that many tackles in the whole World Cup and the whole Six Nations so far. If you think they played New Zealand in that time, they played South Africa, they haven't got anywhere near that number of missed tackles. And one of the things that England did was they kicked a lot less. So they kicked less than 30 times. In fact, they only kicked 21 times. In that whole period, the World Cup, the Six Nations, they've kicked less than 30 times, just 3 times. And they also passed 164 times. So at no point in that 11-game stretch have they passed more than 160 times and kicked fewer than 30. So it was a completely different game plan from England. And I'm not sure if Ireland necessarily would have been expecting that. I think we all knew that England were evolving into something different, but I think what they've actually shown up is astonishingly different.
And for me, I thought Ben Earls was the outstanding forward on the field. I mean, how were his numbers?
Oh, he was absolutely exceptional. So in the tournament so far, he's made the second most metres. So we have to go all the way down to number 18 in the list, to Alan Wainwright, till we find another forward. So Ben Earl is essentially playing like a back. He's playing like a centre, and he's being unbelievable in terms of the carries that he's making. I also think Alex Mitchell was a fantastic part of England's game on Saturday. His average pass length was 8.2 metres, further than any of the other scrum halves on that pitch. And that just helped England get on the outside of Ireland's defence and also cut down a lot of numbers. So obviously if you can pass 8 metres compared to 6, you might knock out 1 or 2 of those defenders standing close to the lock. And that was massively important for England to just get down on the edge to play this expansive game plan that they had.
So England outscored Ireland 3-2 to limit Ireland to 2 tries. You know, a tack that's been scoring tries for fun. What did England do, and what did England stop Ireland doing?
So I think there was a huge amount of work rate. So early on in the game, we saw Ellis Genge chasing across to make that into a 2-on-2 rather than a 2-on-1 to stop an Irish try going over. So there was work rate right the way across the board, and we've seen this Felix Jones defence coming in. I think it's not fully there yet, but you could see what it did to Ireland. Ireland's game plan has been built on really small, short passes, so less than 5 metres. In every single game, they've had more than their opponents. In this game, they had 49 and England had 84. So England were not only able to steal that part of the game plan, but stop Ireland from using it as well.
Okay, it'll be interesting to see if Scotland can stop Ireland in the same way and how Ireland bounce back confidence-wise.
Absolutely. I think that Ireland are going to be a much improved team. I thought they were very good on Saturday, but they just couldn't live with that English pace.
Yeah, I think Ireland did play well. It's just England were superior, and it's a huge boost for English rugby.
Absolutely.
So Sam, now we move on to the final game of the weekend, Principality Stadium, Wales v France. For long periods, this game was quite evenly contested, but the end scoreline was a pretty heavy defeat for Wales.
It was, and it really shows the impact of that bench. If you look at the Welsh bench, there's a lot of players on there who've really not played any, not only international rugby, but very little club rugby as well. And if we look at the first 50 minutes before those subs kicked in, France and Wales basically carried for nearly the same amount of metres, 169 for France, 180 for Wales. In the last 30 minutes, it was 164 for France and just 71 for Wales. So it complete mismatch in that last half an hour. I really think a lot of that has to be just down to that bench. And on top of that, the Welsh scrum really fell apart. And it has all tournament, so it's just over 61%. And that really told when the mismatch in those bench changes came.
Yeah, I was blown away by the penalty stats. Less than 10 penalties in total. And in fairness, Wales' discipline has been really good so far. France obviously haven't been 2 red cards early in the tournament, but both teams really seem to come out of this fallow week focused on actually giving a really nice picture to Luke Pearce.
It was interesting because you look at the coaching teams, you look at perhaps the team setup. This was a very expansive, aggressive game that both teams were playing. We saw a lot of cross kicks from Wales. We saw France trying a lot of stuff in midfield that perhaps didn't always come off, but there was a clear intent there. And I think that you will have had the defence coaches, both from Wigan, both kind of wondering what was going on here. But for the attack coaches, I think they might have found their game plans.
France seemed to dominate territory. Was there anything in their kicking game that basically led to that?
Yeah, so one thing we don't talk about a lot is kickoffs. So it's the third set piece. We've always got the scrum, we've got the line out. The kickoff is very important, especially in this game where there were so many of them. One thing we've seen all tournament is Alan Wainwright getting targeted. Against Scotland, it really didn't work at all. He was just running those back easily. Against France, it was more successful. And Thomas Ramos was putting the ball just 8 metres from the Welsh line, so his average kick was 42 metres. And that meant that Wales were having to play from deep. We know this tournament that Wales's exit has been quite poor, and France were banking on that. They knew that they were giving it to the Wales's best ball carrier, but they thought if we can get him down early enough, then Wales will have to exit, and I think France banked on themselves being in a good field position once that happened. Okay,
so you're a proud Welshman. It's been a difficult tournament for you. Is there anything in the data that leads you to believe you're turning the corner?
I think there's some successful introductions of players. I think Cam Willett has been overall really good. I actually thought the relatively new centre pairing of Watkin and Roberts were good on the weekend. In terms of the data, I think there's still a lot of work to do. The kicking game isn't good enough at the moment. With ball in hand against a team who are willing to take risks, Wales look dangerous. However, if we look at the first half against Scotland, where Scotland weren't really that interested in taking risks and were willing to kick deep, Wales had very little. Against Ireland, where Ireland just dominated territory and dominated possession, again, Wales had very little. Against Italy, it'll be interesting to see because, as we know, Italy's tackle stats have been so high that Wales should look at this as potentially a tired team, and that game plan they employed against France, try and move that pack around and get the ball left to right the way across the width, very un-Gatland-like. I think that could be successful against a team like Italy, who surely by this point will be tired.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Wales have some danger in the back three. Winnett's a really good runner. Rio Dyer's looked electric. Josh Adams hasn't had much ball, but we know he's a top quality player, and I think the way Wales are trying to shift their game plan is to bring those into the game. So one more week, it'll be interesting if it all comes to fruition.
Absolutely.
Sam, thanks again for joining me this week on Beyond 80, and catch up soon. It was very hard to know what would happen in Cardiff. Both teams desperate for a win, but I think France bounced back brilliantly from that draw against Italy. Fabien Galtier made the changes. Le Garac in at 9, man of the match in his first Six Nations start. Deporter at centre, great combination with Fiku. And Ramos at 10 just gave them so much stability. He looked really calm and probably now is up there as the second best 10 behind Intermac. Wales just ran out of steam. Really brave effort from Wales again, but they were just punch drunk by the end, and some of the impact from the French bench was far superior to what Gatland could call upon. The key moment for me is the end of the game. I just want to show how France's ambition to keep the ball alive was a difference between the two teams. And it starts with a scrum just inside the 15-metre line late in the game. And it's the replacements who have a big impact on this. Big scrum from the front row, gets a nice angle, and Luku decides to link with Ramos, who dives down the blind side, where it doesn't look like there's anything on because you've got Gareth Williams and Rio Dyer there. But it's the ability to give 2 passes back on the inside. First of all, Ramos links with Penno, and then Penno picks up Luku, and the Welsh back row can't get there in time. So just a really good example of seeing where a potential space is, but then having the skill set and the communication to take advantage of that. So from France's point of view, a comprehensive away win, scoring a lot of points will just be so good for their soul. They needed that badly, and they're going to be in a really much better place this weekend against England. And I think Galtier will stick with those young players who have given this team a little bit of energy, obviously after a very difficult World Cup. For Wales, it's getting a little bit desperate. Gatland will know that Wayne Pivac lost his job 2 years ago on the back of a home defeat to Italy. I don't think Gatland will lose his job, but at the moment on form, you have to fancy the Italians, who are coming, brimming with confidence, and Wales just struggling for that positive result to get the reward for all their hard work that they're putting in. Thanks for joining us for today's show. Join us next week for a wrap-up of all the action from round 5.